great. Thanks for joining today. Today we're going to run through our P6-QA tool, and this really does help you hunt down problems and deficiencies in your schedule. So I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm coming to you today from Calgary, and I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald Associates. Now, let me run through why we built P6-QA. So this tool is probably about 8 years old, something in that range. Prior to that, when we would be asked to come in and do a schedule critique, we used to make certain layouts and do certain things in the software, and it would take a fair bit of time, easily a week of effort. And we thought there's got to be a better way to do this, so we don't have to spend so much time, cost so much to the client to do these analyses. Because each client that we would do this for was a little bit different, but there was a lot of common things that we were always looking at, right? Like logic, for example, open ends, looking for very long activities, things like that. So there was a lot of commonality. So we decided, well, there's got to be a way to build this. And we wanted to build it specifically to be inside a P6. What we did not want to do was to make our clients have to buy other software, deploy it in a different place, only give it to certain people because it's so darn expensive, like some of the tools out there are. So we didn't like that. So the strategy that we took was, let's build it right inside of P6. Okay, and that's what you're going to see. I'm going to show it to you live inside of P6. Because there are standards. There are standards out there in the marketplace. There's standards as to what is a good schedule. There's also a lot of subjectivity. If you've been in any of these conversations about negative lags, they can get pretty heated. So we wanted to set some base standards, things that we're going to analyze that you can pick from. Okay, so we've got quite a few. I'm not sure the exact number, but let's say in the hundreds of QA points that you can use. You don't have to use all of them. You can pick the ones you want. So let's say you have to follow the DCMA standard, perhaps you'll pick those, but you might have others that you want. Okay, so we allowed the flexibility to use some standards for timing, resources, costs, and then you can put your own in place as well. So we've allowed additional because we want you to be able to get to reliable, consistent schedules, get rid of any review bottlenecks, always having the senior scheduler having to look at it. We want people to be able to self-critique, so that was a big thing for us. And also give you the ability to add. So business processes is what we call them, and client-specific things that you might want to monitor. Okay, so I have some clients that use this flag inside of P6 called the primary resource. They use it specifically for a variety of metrics, reports, etc. So that is something that we can add to monitor, make sure that there's always a primary resource. Okay, so things like that. And then that way you don't have to have such expensive third-party reviewers. You may still have some reviewers, right? But it's going to be a bit more streamlined is really what we're looking for. So the benefits should be that you're getting better schedules. All the team can self-critique. And when you do want someone to come in and help analyze certain items in your schedule, it's going to be much more cost effective. So how it works is we develop the quality metrics. We've got already lots pre-built, okay? So we can deploy what we've already got and go from there. And then you will monitor those, okay? So the obvious ones are durations, logic. Those are obvious ones. Those are for the schedule. We're going to look at things like constraints. We will also allow you to look at resources and costs, so all sorts of things there, and updating. So once you start updating, there's quality metrics that we monitor for updating. So as I mentioned, there are many standards out in the marketplace, and our tool already has a huge number of those already pre-built in. And as I mentioned, you can add your own. Okay, so we've got a lot of those quality metrics already in the system. So right out of the box. So in terms of adding additional things, I mentioned an example with resources, but activity ID numbering might be something that you want done in a certain format. Project naming conventions. So there's all sorts of different ones that we've added for our clients over the years. And then you've got the flexibility as to what you're monitoring, how you monitor it to hit different objectives. Okay, so if you do shutdowns and turnarounds, obviously we're working in hours. If you're doing a big, long capital project, you're probably working in days. So when you're looking at a duration, what you call a long activity is going to be quite different. Okay, so I'm going to show you that you've got the flexibility to set up your own metric, if you will. Okay, so we're monitoring duration, but what constitutes a long duration will be different for the different kinds of projects, even perhaps the different stages of a project. Okay, so if you're at a proposal stage versus an approval stage or execution stage, the way you want to monitor could vary. So I'll show you that as well. Okay. And then in terms of the types of checks, we've got a lot. We've got tons of different checks. Okay, so we've got calendar checks, we've got statistic sheets. We've even created dashboards from our P6 Reporter tool, which is a separate add-on tool Emerald's built that allow you to publish these out into Power BI and things like that. Okay, so I'll show you those as well. Okay, so I am going to jump into the software and show it to you in detail. And again, if you have any questions, throw them in the question room and I'll try and answer them as I go. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing an example of a dashboard that we've put out via P6 Reporter and into Power BI in this example. Okay, but P6 Reporter lets you push snapshotted data out into whatever platform you're using already within your organization. Okay, so this is sort of the end result of P6-QA running an analysis. So I'm going to come back to these, but this is really the benefit, right? That you can get very quick idea of how you're doing within your project. Okay, so if I look, I like this chart here up on the top right. I really like that one. I find it very handy because not only does it give us a number, but it gives us an order of magnitude, right? You can see very quickly that we've got a lot of activities with logic missing. We've got a lot of activities with high float. We've got a lot of activities with high duration. Okay, so you can see that very quickly. So I really do like this type of chart. Now, where does this come from? Well, let's go into P6 and let's try and understand where this data is coming from. Okay, so let me orient you as to what you're seeing here on the screen. So I am in the project view and I am looking at a layout in the project view. So first and foremost, we have our projects and we set up P6-QA right inside of P6. So it's not a different tool from the user's perspective. We're using the web services functionality to hook right inside of P6. Okay, so your users could all have access to it. That's the way we sell it. It's not sold per user, it's per database and per number of items that you're monitoring. Okay, so if you monitor more, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's still virtually pennies on every metric. Okay, it's not a very expensive software tool. So what am I trying to show you here? So let me go ahead and open this project. And this might be a project that we just started. It could be a project that we've been working on for a while and we want to start checking it. We want P6-QA to actually look at it and monitor it. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you how this works. So I'm just going to open a P6-QA layout. So we are really focused on using out-of-the-box features inside of QA. So, okay, so first and foremost, we can control the frequency of when QA is being run. So you can let it run automatically, okay, like we have here in these two examples. These are being run weekly or monthly, but you can control that, okay? So if you want it more often, daily, hourly, you can do that. You can also do it manually. So you have control over when and how often QA runs. Now, since I'm doing a demo, I'm going to run it manually for you, okay? Now, after I run it, I'm going to see whether or not my project has any struggles, any issues within these different criteria. So these are the different criteria that we've got. So I'm going to look at whether we've got a high duration. And if we do have a high duration, how many? Do we have high float? And if so, how many? So these are the statistics. This is the indicator, the flag. Do we have constraints, hard constraints, soft constraints? Do I have missing successors, or logic is missing, or predecessors are missing? So these are all the different kinds of metrics that you can evaluate and get the information here, okay? So the way you run this is very simple, okay, since I'm running it manually. And yes, I want this project to be part of QA, but I can have some set to no, okay? So you can, again, you can control it. I will run it manually, and in this case, I'm just gonna, whoops, let me do that properly. Let me clear, I'm just gonna clear the date, and then it's going to run, okay? I will just refresh that, and then it'll just start doing its thing. Now, you might say, well, how long is this gonna take? Well, it depends on your project. If it's a very big project and it's the first time you're running it, it could take a few minutes. If it's a small project, which I have here, and it's not the first time I'm running it, it'll be very, very quick, okay? So it's finished. So it does the actual flagging, saying I've got a problem. It does the number, so it's giving me the number, the statistics in here as well. And then I can then react to those and start to dig deeper into those problem areas, okay? So this is at the project level. It's giving me the overview, the summary of what it's found in the detail. Now, not everyone that you're going to communicate this with is going to be in P6 reacting to these. So we also have created these notebooks with the details. So let's look at the schedule quality, and you can look at the notebook and you can look at the specifics, okay? So we've given you different layers of information. These can actually be cut and paste out into your email, into a Word file. So they're very, very handy because it's just HTML information on it. Okay. Now, so what are we looking at here? So this is saying we've got a target with a percentage. So it's saying 5% or less, 10% or less. So let me explain what that means. So what that is letting us do is say, if I have one activity out of 100 that has this problem, don't make it red. But if I get, excuse me, if I get to 10, or if I, in this case, if I get to 5 out of 100, flag it as red. Okay, and what this is showing is we've got 28% of activities with this problem. Okay, so that's well over our threshold. So we clearly need to look at why we've got so many missing predecessors. So we've got more logic cleanup to do. Now, not every metric should be run on all the activities. Okay, so some should only be on activities that are not finished, for example, or some maybe shouldn't be run on things like level of efforts, things like that. So that's why we've got actual, which is the total, and remaining, which is the proper metric. Plus, I'm going to show you one other layer that comes into play with the remaining in a second. Okay, so we get this report, and the report also has some lists in here. Now, these are not full lists because some of these pages might be massive. Okay, but it gives like a top list, and then you can dig in deeper. Okay, so this is just exploring each one of these metrics in more detail and giving you a bit of backup. Okay, now, what do you do with all this? Well, you sure don't want to leave it like that. You don't want to leave the schedule like that. You actually want to go in and fix these problems and then rerun it. Okay, so that's the idea of self-serve. If I'm the scheduler building this schedule, or perhaps I'm receiving it from a contractor and I need to critique it, right? I don't want to, I want to be able to do this, get the feedback to the contractor and or work with them to fix it, okay? Again, depending on your process, okay? So if you're critiquing the schedule, you can run this and then send this, this notebook out to the contractor for them to fix this up, okay? Now, let's understand how we would do that. So then I go into the actual project. So I open it up and I'm looking at my schedule quality and I'm looking at the logic, okay? Now I could look at all the metrics in one if I want. It's quite a few fields. So I've broken it into a few different layouts, okay? Again, we're just trying to take advantage as much as possible of what you already are comfortable with doing inside of P6. Okay, so what am I seeing here? So I'm seeing that I've got a lot of activities that have overall validation. We've got problems, but let's look at the logic. So I'm looking at this second column here. Now I've got quite a few activities with logic missing. So in this case, I've got a missing predecessor. I'm okay on my successor. On some of these, I'm missing both my predecessor and my successor. Okay, so that's not good. And I need to do some work on that. Now, I could quite easily, I'm going to just do a link activities. So that's going to be a finish to start on these. If some of you aren't familiar with what that is, I can show it to you better. And what that is, it's going to do logic ties on these, finish to start, okay? If you're more comfortable looking at it in the details, we can look at that way as well, and we can look at the relationship. So I've done a finish to start on these. Okay, now, how do I see this stop sign symbol turn to green? Because I just did the logic, so it should turn some of those to green. Not a problem. What I'll do is I'll just go back and I'll rerun this. So I'll just clear this, get that out of there, hit enter, refresh, and then I'm going to jump back to the activities here. And I should see some of these start to change to green. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we got some of these switching from red to green as we would expect. Okay. Now let me just go back just to more of a table area. Now, You can see that the first one is still missing a predecessor. Okay, so that's not great. Maybe we should tie this to something else. Okay, so maybe I tie it to a milestone up here. So project sanction might be my first milestone. But there may be times where it's okay. You're comfortable with the fact that there's no predecessor on it. That's what this little blue star is used for. So that way I don't have to keep seeing this red stop sign every single time. So if I use this blue star, this is saying that I've looked at it, I have physically looked at it, and I don't want it to be counted as a problem because it's okay. We have evaluated it and it's all right to have that. Okay. So you may have the same thing with the successor. Oops. Sometimes this does this strange thing to my layout. Let me just save that. So same thing on the successor. Perhaps you're comfortable with this having no successor. Now you need to be much more careful with those, of course. And then you could do the same thing. So anytime that we've evaluated a particular point that's been analyzed and we're comfortable with it and we want it not included as a problem, we can use this blue star. Okay, so you can see here I did it here as well. So let's look at that. So this is type of logic. Is it finished to start? So of course we can use many different types of logic ties. We've got finish to start, finish to finish, start to start, start to finish. The most common one that should be used the bulk of the time for a nice, clean, easy to analyze schedule should be finish to start. So that's a metric that we're looking at. Have we been using finish to starts? Now, let's look at this. This is a milestone. This is a start milestone. So start milestones have certain things that maybe don't warrant a finish to start. So in this example, I've tied my milestone to a level of effort, to one of those hammocks or summary activities. So in that case, we make them start to start. So again, in this case, it found this start to start. It flagged it as a non-finish to start, but I'm saying it's okay for that one to be there. Again, analyzing it and giving that flagging capability. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. If we look at the one above it, we see we've got some other issues. We've got some lags and we've got some long lags. Okay, so that's this one here. So we've got a finish to finish and then 200 days of lags. And you need to analyze whether that is okay or not. Okay, so P6-QA is doing all this analysis and giving you the feedback in a very easy to consume way that you can then react to. Now, when we're looking at things like float, so if we have activities with a lot of float, it usually lets you know that maybe there's a logic problem. Okay, so maybe you've got an open end and you need to address that. We're also showing you how much the float is over the criteria. Okay, so you might say that on a turnaround, maybe an activity with two to 3 days of float is acceptable. On a capital project, maybe 1 or 2 weeks of float, maybe up to 4 weeks of float is acceptable. Anything beyond that, we want to look at because it's probably a mistake, okay, in our logic or something like that. So this is giving us the statistic of how much that float is over. So not only are we showing you the stop sign, but we're giving you the ability to organize these with the worst, worst. So a higher number would be a bigger problem, okay? So you could sort them And then you could even take this grouping off and then you can look at them. Okay, so we're doing a lot of really helpful things to make it easy for you to self-critique and use layouts in P6 to help you get there. Okay, now durations. Okay, so high durations is another very common one. Pretty much all the schedule criteria, quality metrics out there want to see about durations. But level of efforts, of course, are summary activities. So they will often have high durations. So this is another one that we're going to blue star and say, yes, this is a long activity, but it's not driving logic. It's not driving the schedule. So we're going to just flag those. Okay, so this works really well, very flexible, and very easy to use. And it goes far beyond what you can do out of the box in P6. So yes, you could see if there's an open end. You can see that. That's a field that's already there. But to be able to see it and then flag it is what QA is giving you. And then, of course, the leads, the lags, you can't see those in a layout. Not at all. I mean, you can see them when you put the concatenation field, but you can't really work with it in any way, shape, or form. So we're exposing that data and making it much more usable to the user. Now, let's just go back to these flaggings. Okay, so why is it a red stop sign versus a yield sign versus a check mark? So there's two layers to setting up a metric. So the next layer is the percentage. So we have these layouts pre-built, simple to use with the criteria. Okay, so let me try and explain what you're seeing here. So when we're looking at logic and whether it's missing, we can say we have 0 tolerance. So as soon as there's one, flag it with a red stop sign. But, I might be at the point where I'm just building the schedule. The project's not started. It's quite a ways away. And I don't want my whole dashboard to be showing red. Okay. So I might have a bit of a different tolerance on what is red versus a yield sign versus a green, depending on where I'm at in the planning process. So in this example, I've got a 5%, so 5 out of 100 activities. If I've got some missing logic, it's okay to show it as green, okay? I still see the percentage, it still shows it to me, but it doesn't show it as a red. So that's how you would set these up. Now, some of these tolerances, they're not just a yes or no. So a logic is it there or is it not? Okay, so that's a yes or no. Some of them need a range. So we were looking at durations. This example is on a lag. So what is called a long lag? So if I have a finish to start and I put an 8-hour lag or less, then it would be green. But in this case, if I put a 10-hour lag or two-day lag, it would be red. Okay, so this one gives you not only a red and a green, but it also can give you a yellow because we can have a tolerance along with it, okay, meaning it's close or it's close to being a problem. So this is where, again, it's all done within P6, so I don't have to go into another place to do that. I can have a preset template for all of these items, and then I just copy and paste this template to make my new schedule. So this makes it really easy to set up, and it makes it very easy for your senior schedulers to help the more junior folks who are just starting out understand what they're working with. Okay, so this works really, really well. And you can analyze all sorts of things. So let's look at a few other types of things that we we critique. So I've got a business process validation. Okay, so I'm going to pop that open and we can look at some of these as well. So we have clients who want to look at certain activity ID formats. Okay, so they have a format. So we can specify what that format is and they can monitor that. We have lots of clients use roles, use primary resource flagging, use expense accounts and expense categories and cost accounts. So we can look at all those and again, do the monitoring down into the resources. We have clients who use steps and they use steps with physical percent completes. So they want to monitor those. So we've classified those as business process, meaning not everyone uses these and you have a bit more flexibility, okay? So this was just a way for us to classify the different types of metrics that we're monitoring. And then you can see we've got a lot that go into a lot of detail on relationships because again, the standards out in the marketplace are heavy onto the logic, okay? So lots of different ways that you can look at things. Now, we had some clients who wanted even more special metrics. So for example, calendars. Okay, so this is a special one that a few of our clients wanted. So in this example, we're actually trying to see if the calendars all line up with a start and finish time. And if they don't, meaning some of the start, in this example, you see we've got a yes, meaning it's a problem. We've got different finish times on the activities. Okay, so that's a special one that we did for a few clients because they wanted to see if the days of the week, the hours of the day were all the same or not. Okay, so again, we can do quite a few different things because we're using our P6 calculator technology embedded in the QA and then using P6 itself to run all that and give you all that information right in P6. So we can do a lot of different metrics. And we've already pre-built some of these standards that are out in the marketplace so that you can hit the ground running and not have to do any stuff from scratch, okay? So when we sell this tool, we do sell a little consulting to help you get it set up so that you can, again, jumpstart it very quickly. And then that gives you a good starting point to move forward. Now, we looked at logic. Let's look at a few other things, okay? So let's look at, I'm gonna look at this project where we've already started updating and I want to see how my updating is going, okay? So again, I have an updating layout. Again, just to make it easier, we've got these different layouts already built and we do deploy them with the tool. So you've got a place to start and we can look at our updating. Okay, so if you're analyzing a schedule that a contractor's sending you, okay, they give you the schedule and you can run the QA on it at each update. So some of the updating things that our clients are looking at, they're looking at durations, okay? So they want to see if the remaining duration has gotten bigger than the original duration. That's an important one. The actual duration, is it bigger than the budgeted original duration? Yes or no? And so on. Okay, so that's what these are for. Are the activities finishing late? Of course, that's a key thing you want to see. So we've got a flag there. So we've got a lot of activities that are going beyond their budgeted finish date, okay, usually from your from your baseline is what we're using for that, and so on. Okay, so let's open up this schedule, and I'm going to open up the matching layout that looks at the updates and gives us the warnings on updates. Okay. Okay, so we should have one here for updates. Whoops, here it is. No. Interesting. Looks like maybe someone overwrote it. Okay, not a problem. So let me just see which one is closest here. Okay, schedule call BP indicators. Missing mandatory code. I'm going to touch on that one because I forgot to mention that. And let me just see. I think this one may not. Oh, okay, this one might be quite close. Yes, this one's pretty good. Okay, so no, I'm wrong. Okay, it looks like maybe we've had someone override it. Okay, well, what are the kind of things that you're looking at when you're doing updating? Well, when you're doing updating, you're looking at your durations, your remaining durations. You're looking at your budgeted units and so on, okay? Let me just see if I happen to have it in one of my, no, looks like I've got it missing. Okay, not a problem. Just looks like whoever did this maybe last time maybe overwrote it because we should have a layout for it. Okay, well, let me go back and let's talk about the mandatory codes because that's a good one. And then I'll touch on the updating a little bit more. Okay, so mandatory codes. So this is something that is a frustration for quite a few of our clients, that there is no way to make a code mandatory, meaning it has to be filled in. So what we did was we use certain naming conventions for mandatory codes, and then we flag those as missing. Okay, so let me explain that a little bit better. So we use, some of these codes are mandatory. Things like discipline, things like phase, those are often ones that you're going to use in your standard dashboards, okay? And we want to make sure that they are filled in, they're not missed, because otherwise your dashboards will not be complete. So as more and more of our clients drive into standardized dashboards across their portfolio, their program, and within a client group, and of course across their projects, we want more standardization. Doesn't mean you have no flexibility. It just means some of the things have to be basic. Things like perhaps discipline is a good one, where we want to report on different disciplines always. So that's a mandatory one. Okay. So this would flag it. And then what you would do is go and fill them in and make sure they're not missing. Okay. That's a big one. Otherwise, you know, your dashboards will be incomplete. Okay, so let's go back to the updating. And what I'll do is, how am I going to show this to you? Let's go to the resource layout and let's just try and see if there's one other layout that might give me part of it. Let's see if this one's got any of it in it. No, that's all. Well, yeah, it's pretty much not updating related. Let's just see here. Yeah, okay, let's see if this primary role might give us some stuff. Not the best. Okay, well, that's all right. Let me just try and explain what the updating one will look at. So the updating one is going to look at things like this. So did I start the activity? If the answer is yes, it's expecting that, hey, I've got a resource and my actual better have something filled in. That's an important piece, because if it doesn't, then more than likely, this means that I missed some information on my update And things like my earned value may be incorrect. Okay. So that's an important monitoring metric to see whether, the actuals have been filled on an activity that is started. That's a big one. Remaining duration, that's another one. Okay. So when you're statusing and you've started the activity, what's going on with your duration? Okay. Is it being updated? Yes or no? And what's your variance? So that's another important one. Okay. So there's a bunch of metrics that you want to manage on updating, and you want to see them very quickly. Now, another one you might have encountered is the dates. So if I have an activity that, let's say I'm updating at the end of my month, so being that it's November here, we're doing an update here at the end of the month. If my start date says December, that is usually a bit of a red flag. Now, it's not necessarily that they did something wrong, okay? Because I might be forecasting and they told me they're going to start on the 1st of December. But we want it to be flagged because it could be that I put the wrong date. I may have done it wrong and I might have put a date in December rather than November. So it's a flag to say, hey, your actual start date is after your data date, and that could be a mistake. Okay. Now, you can use the blue star to say, no, this is all right. I know I did that. It's just okay. This is an exception-based thing. Okay. So those are the types of things that we're monitoring on the updating, and that's important because when you're looking at an update, you don't always have a lot of time to spend, analyzing it. So you want to be able to evaluate it very quickly. Okay. I see a question. Let me just take a look at it. Please let me know if this layout is default or is it not. How did you set up for analyzing the layout? Okay. Okay. So when you buy P6-QA, when you subscribe to it, it's a subscription based on a yearly basis. It's not per person, it's per database and volume of metric points. Okay, so we've got a standard package, a professional package, and a corporate package. We also offer it as a service. Okay, so I have run this for a large construction project in New York, over 8,000 activities, and I ran the QA in less than 2 hours. Okay, so we do offer it as a service as well. So we've got those 3 different options. When you subscribe to it, we bring these layouts with us. Okay, so we install them in your system. So it's not a default one. You don't get it when you get P6, but all of these QA layouts that we have, we will bring them with us. Now, we then modify them for your specifics, but then it gives you something as a starting point. Okay, actually, that was handy. Maybe this one is the one that I'm hoping to see. No, still not quite what I wanted. Okay, I think I'm not going to be able to show you the updating layout quite the way I was hoping. So let me just see if we've got it hiding somewhere else. No, I don't see it. Okay, all right, not a problem. Okay, so then what do you do with all this? Well, you've looked at all this data, you've critiqued the schedules, you've got your updating, you've got your planned as well as your updating, you've got your business processes and client specific. Okay, now what do you do with this? Well, you need to communicate where the problems are. Okay, so as I told you, we've got the different notebooks that you can use to communicate with the contractor, perhaps. And you can communicate within the P6 environment on that as well. But you may want to go further and communicate out in a dashboard. Okay, let me explain that. I found the layout where we put the updating criteria. So let me just see if there's something I missed explaining here. In progress, finish date, less than data date, finished late, we talked about those. Negative floats, of course, we want to look to see if something's become negative float. So that's a good one. Resources over budget. Okay, so I mentioned we monitor if the actuals have been filled in, yes or no. We also monitor and flag if you've got an over budget. Okay, your at completion is going over the budget, and we've got a tolerance on over budget as well. Okay, so that's another handy one there. So what do you do to get this data out and shareable? Okay, so because we have our P6 reporter tool, so it's a separate tool, also sold on subscription based, and it takes snapshots of the data and lets you report on that. So what we would do is we would do our analysis, and we would then snapshot this out to our, it's our data warehouse, which is part of P6 Reporter. So we have the ability to take a snapshot at any time. So I ask it to snapshot this project. And when it snapshots, it has two different ways it can tag the snapshot. It can tag it with the data date, or it can tag it with today's date. Okay, so you have controls over the naming convention that you put in place. So these two tools work together. And the output of the snapshot is in a warehouse, in a database that you can then create these reports off of. Okay, so this is the last piece that you might want to have to get the data into a self-serve dashboard. Now, what the snapshotting does is it lets me, see the project, but it also lets me see different dates that that project was snapshotted on. So if you do your updates monthly, for example, I can see the different report dates. Now, in this particular case, there was no change. That means nothing got worse, nothing got better. But we might have different dates with different data, which changes these dashboards. So these are food for thought, right? Again, if you have P6-QA plus P6 Reporter, we can get these dashboards out very quickly. And then we can have a variety of different things that we want to look at. So we might want to have a DCMA table. That might be our standard, our corporate standard. Let's go to this one first. And we might want to see the corporate standard for multiple snapshots of one project, okay? So this is saying that my July 1st, 2022, I had multiple issues with with this particular project, but they got better over time. That's what this is showing. Okay, so the different snapshots have different data. Now this is showing that this particular project got worse. So this latest update, I have better on open ends, but I got worse on remaining open ends, worse on successor open ends, which probably implies I've added activities to the schedule. That's probably what that's implying, okay? So this gives you an idea of whether I'm trending better or trending worse. Now that's multiple projects. I can also look at it one project at a time, and I can do one project side by side. Okay, so I can look at two different updates together. So there's lots of different ways to take advantage of this data and get it into a usable format. Now, you might want to see it more of a metric with, is it getting better over time or worse over time? So this is showing that I'm getting more high float in my schedule. So you can look at it with different graphics and analysis points. And this is looking at multiple schedules, snapshots. Okay, so that's something that's not very easy to do in P6 itself. So if this is the sort of thing that your team is looking for, the data warehouse reporter piece with the QA could be of interest to get this sort of time over time kind of analysis. And then we've got, these are just food for thought, right? Just different types of snapshots and right down into the activity detail. So if you have a user that's not in P6, but they need to be able to see a bit more detail, then you can actually deploy this kind of tabular chart quite easily. Now, sometimes we want to go further. We don't just want a summary. Okay, I actually want to know, where are these activities? And are these activities at the beginning of my project or later in my project? Okay. So we also have the ability to create histograms off of these. Okay. So what this is trying to show is, okay, I've got my schedule. This is the snapshot I'm looking at. Again, I can look at different snapshots. And it's trying to show a time-based distribution of where the problems are occurring. Okay. So my durations at the beginning of my project, I've got a lot that are too big. And then I can see that I've got a bunch in the middle and then a lot less at the end. Okay, which is good, because if I have a bunch at the end with long durations, it's a very concerning issue, because more than likely it means I haven't thought out the detail that I need to once I start executing. Okay, so this is why the time-based graphics are very helpful as well. Again, float, do I have a lot of negative float? Yes, I've got some here. I better take a look at that. I've got a lot of big float, but not a huge number on the back. Okay, so this helps you pinpoint exactly how problematic the issues really are. Okay, it's an extra layer than just the numbers. Okay, so this is sort of the starting point, but then you want to get into more granular detail. Now, not only do we have the variances, but we also have the statistics. Okay, so in this case, these are just a few activities. It's not a big thing, but we've got some big problems here in the middle. You can see this. Okay, so again, it helps us understand where and how drastic the problems really are. Because if it's one or two activities, it's not maybe that big a deal to fix. But if you've got a lot of activities with high durations, a lot of activities with high float, then it's likely there's more work to do to fix these problems. Okay. So again, that gives you another layer of detail and food for thought, and gives you more ability to understand how drastic the improvements are that are needed to get this schedule to be more usable. Okay, I think I've given you a good overview of the way the tool works. I'll take note that I need to work on that updating layout. Somehow it's been overwritten or whatnot. I will work on that. But I don't see any additional questions at the moment. So maybe what I'll do is I will jump back into the PowerPoint and wrap up. And again, if you do have any questions, you can ask them in the question room. Okay. So the other thing that we've done with our clients is you can actually push a full-blown report out from BI Publisher, which is an add-on tool to P6. And you can then push that out into like a Word document and things like that. So that's another option that you have for getting the data out and easier to consume. Now, we have clients who use this on their regular updates. Some of them have 50 to 100 schedules they're getting every week. So having a tool that does the bulk of the heavy lifting is a huge, huge savings. So we can have lots of benefits to the team. Okay, so this is some feedback from our users. So the skill set for a user, this streamlines the learning. Okay, you don't, and it allows you to self-correct immediately. You don't have to wait till the end of the month to have your lead scheduler review it. Okay, which can be a bottleneck. You don't want to have that. You want to be able to self-serve and self-critique as you go. Okay, and this is a quote from one of our clients. Now I do not need to ask my lead every time to help when I get a contractor's schedule. So that's a huge win as well. Okay, so again, you can kind of divvy the work up more appropriately and analyze the bulk of it. And then there might be one or two things that you're not quite sure what should the feedback look like related to this item, but it's a lot quicker conversation. Now, the other thing that our clients have done with these dashboards is they run through them with the contractor and in a meeting, get agreement on what their next steps are going to be. And they've got that documented in using these. Okay, so that can be very handy as well. So I could see we had a problem very fast. The critical path was not reliable. Okay, so that's important feedback. And this is the speed. I've already talked about that particular example. That's a company I worked with in New York to evaluate a schedule very quickly. Now, in that case, I was working with the CFO, who was not a scheduler. He didn't have any schedulers on his team, and he needed a quick way to have an idea whether this schedule was reliable for the contractor to build this building. Okay. All right, let me just see. I think I see a question. Okay, the P6-QA database analyzer and dashboard looks like complicated and is not user-friendly for grab quick information and results. Okay, well, if the layouts that I showed you feel too complicated, you can simplify those. So that's the thing that I think is important, is you can simplify it. Now I'm trying to show you quite a few things in one session. So our layouts have quite a few fields, but I think if you spent a little more time, you might find it's not that difficult to understand. And the reports really, both the notebook and the dashboards, I think you'll find are very comprehensive and quite easy to digest because they're tabular and easy to work with. Can we have a comparative layout? I mean to show columns with status of indicators at last update, refresh their status at current time period. Yes. Okay. Yes, yes and no. So that's not that easy to do in P6, but definitely, yes, that's something that could be done in the snapshot and then out into the QA report dashboard. Yeah, because you want to see the difference, right? What's changed, what's gotten better, what's gotten worse. So yeah, that's definitely something doable when you compare the two dashboards. Absolutely. All righty. Okay, so I think I've answered the questions that came up so far. So yes, thanks for spending the last hour with us. Hopefully you saw something that's of interest. If you're doing this sort of work yourself with some other tools that are quite expensive and usually reserved for the senior schedulers only, or you're doing this out in Excel with all sorts of spreadsheets, I think you'll find this is a much more streamlined, easier to use methodology as well. So if you have any questions, you can send us some questions. I will put my email in the chat as well. So it's NicoleJ at info@emerald-associates. You can reach out that way. You can also just send us an RFI, whatever works best, and keep in touch that way. If you do want us to follow up specifically in a certain way, I've put this question up there. So if there's a method you want us to use to stay in touch, just let us know and we'll use that method to make sure we're communicating appropriately with you. Okay, excellent. So this is one of many tools Emerald has. If you've been on our website, you can see we've got a lot of good add-on tools for P6. They're being used all around the world with client types from contractors to owners and engineering firms. So it's a good mix, and please explore them. And we'll have more. We have a few webinars in December, but not many. We'll have more coming for you in January.